I'm all about the art and the provenance of the automobile. My first business was aerial photography. Align their history with some sort of piece of work that reflects their personal experiences and record other people's stories about a particular car onto that canonical NFT, and it can become a living chain of history. All of these stories are part of us. We just don't know about them.
I think one of the biggest detriments to car culture in the last 10 years has been social media. It's like we've never been more connected, but at the same time, kind of alone. All right, it is time for the next episode of the Money Shift podcast. This is episode number 34. And today we are talking with a woman named Cindy, somebody that we've been kind of in each other's orbit for quite some time now. We've recently started chatting a little bit more to see how we can help each other because there's a lot of crossover. We're both very passionate about car culture, and we're both building some things in the Web3 space. So you might know her and her account as CarCulture.eth, and I'm really excited to bring her on as a guest today. And first, we're going to go ahead and say hi to our co-host, Gary. We've got him back this week. And how you doing this morning, Gary?
Hey, good afternoon. I'm doing well. Just here, ready for another day or another episode of the Money Shift podcast. I can't believe we're on episode 34. So hey, it's great to be here and ready to learn. I guess we're going to be talking about in regards to what Cindy's building on her end, and also diving a little bit into our newsletter, and perhaps some alpha will be dropped. Who knows? But yeah, great to be here.
All right, cool. Well, let's go ahead and say hi to our guest, Cindy from CarCulture.eth. And again, thank you so much for agreeing to jump on with us sort of last minute here. But we had a really good conversation yesterday, and I was like, we've got to get her on the podcast. And it just worked out that we were able to bring you on today. So how are you doing this morning?
Great. It's like hitchhiking. Put out your thumb and the right car pulls up. You're gone.
It's so funny because I find people that are really into the car culture, they always use automotive analogies. That's just where your brain goes. And I've noticed numerous times while we're talking, your car analogies are on point.
Well, that's the fun part. The lore is deep, right? There were a lot of drivers before us.
And hopefully plenty of drivers to come after us.
That's right. Yes. That's what we're working on.
Yeah. And I guess before we really get like your story, maybe this is a good jumping off point, but one of the things that you said when we met yesterday was that what you're doing, you hope is going to help to preserve car culture for future generations. And that's something I'm super passionate about as well. And that's what we're like, one of the main reasons we're building what we're building. So I would like to just get a really quick, like top of mind idea of like where you see car culture going, and what needs to be done to preserve it.
Well, we're lucky that blockchains are finally coming into fashion again. And I know that you guys have been along for the ride for a long time, but many other people have not. And they've mostly been under the hood working on their cars, which is a good place to be. But we've been working under different kinds of hoods. And now we have an opportunity to merge our two headspaces permanently onto blockchain for future generations so that people can learn and explore the world that we live in on the web, but it be permanently preserved, the knowledge for future generations. I'm all about the art and the provenance of the automobile. That's our deal.
Nice. It definitely shows with some of the things you were sharing yesterday, which we'll get into here in a little bit. But I guess before we go any further, would you mind sharing your story, how you got into cars, where that took you, some of the, adventures that you've gone on along the way, and also speak to your art and photography.
Well, it's quite interesting. I learned to drive when I was 4. My dad was really into cars, and I sat on his lap, and we had a deal. I would steer, and he would shift. And that was the beginning. Right then, I can remember the day that I first had the wheel in my hand, and it was great. And he was an attorney in Appalachia, where I grew up, and the roads were terrible. So we had a dirt runway that the community used to fly small aircraft in and out. So I grew up in a bunch of different small airplanes held together by duct tape. And I was the navigator. I helped him. He had to get to courthouses across the region, and it was very difficult with the highways being what they were in the mountains. So I flew the right seat. I was in charge of radios, calculating how much gas we had, where we could deviate to, what the frequencies for the next airport were, et cetera. And it just got wired into my brain at a very early age. So the internet is very much like navigating through the air. You go from waypoint up in the sky, and that's how it all began. I had to wash the airplane and keep the maps up to date and dial in the next airport along the way.
Wow, that's a heck of a way to dip your toe into, let's say, I think it's both automotive and aviation side of things. That's really cool. And
Yeah.
then when,
It was super cool because the airport was built by the community. It was called Mudsuck International. Because when you would test your engine, the mud would get sucked up under the airplane wings, and it was terrible to wash them. And that was my job.
nice, yeah, teaching you the hard work early on. I love it.
My dad was ruthless.
Yeah. And then from there, what was your journey through car culture as you were growing up as a young woman, and where that took you from there?
Well, I had a lot of different motorcycles from a very early age. And I got my airplane ratings, private and instrument. So I was no stranger to engines. I knew my way around. And when I went to college, I developed a very deep interest in oral history, the importance of keeping oral history. And when I graduated, my family expected me to go to law school. I was the great female hope, but I refused to go, and I became a metal sculptor. And I started
Oh, wow.
hanging out in junkyards around a lot of car parts, and I learned to weld. And I lived in a teepee. And my grandmother finally tracked me down, and she said, "You can come back into the family if you promise to register all your copyrights," because I was a passionate photographer. My first business was aerial photography. That's how I got started. And she loaned me the money to buy some new cameras. And I started registering copyrights. And what a long road it's been. And that led me into blockchain, oddly, because copyrights are almost like a form of notary. So each car I would shoot, I would record my copyright on. And that's how the car looked at that date. So over time, there's a tremendous amount of provenance that has unwittingly, I will say that honestly, unwittingly built up in my archive. And I'm turning that loose over to the community so people will be able to dive into it.
Nice. So that is what you currently have live on the gallery of your website?
I'm building a new website now. It's under development, but because NFTs have gotten such a bad rap over the last year or so, I'm very focused on providing proof of the provenance of the content. So I'm developing a set of proofs that link to the smart contract, to the copyright, and verify the authenticity of the content.
Let's go ahead and pull this up and take a look at it. So this is, for those that want to check this out themselves, it's carmania.carculture.com/gallery dash, what is that? LR?
It's under development, but go to CarCulture.com and then you can navigate to the gallery, which
Yeah.
I'm working on.
Yeah. So if you go to the top right menu, hit gallery, and that's where you'll find it.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about what you're doing for the NFT collection, what your concept is, where you're at with it, that would be great.
Well, it's a massive collection, and to not overwhelm, I'm trying to organize it in a way that it will be accessible to many different kinds of people. Those are my covered cars. They're my test ponies, my test
Mhm.
harness for the racetrack I'm building. But there you go. There's a provenance proof. I don't know if you can see the links and to the contract address. Yeah. And the IP that's involved. Everything lives on Arweave, which is a permanent record on blockchain. Arweave is a little different than Ethereum and Bitcoin, but I believe it's very powerful, and I've chosen to write all of my provenance content there.
How far along are you with your collection, and when do you think that you'll have it ready for people to start collecting?
Well, it's going to be fairly soon. I've already created about 3,000 NFTs, and there's many, many more thousands to come. But everybody has their own story about their relationship with the car. So my goal is to enable the enthusiasts or the families that have been involved in car culture to align their history with some sort of piece of work that reflects their personal experiences. So let's say you were into Maseratis as a kid, your grandfather had one, or you went to a racetrack and you saw one and you fell in love with it and it kind of like changed your life. Those kinds of stories. People have scrapbooks that they don't know what their grandfather was posed beside in 1929, but they maybe have a picture and they might see it come up on the website and discover that, hey, it was probably that car or that truck. Do you see the truck beside the Mustang
Right
wheel
here.
with the white? So that is an amazing vehicle that someone in our community built. They resurrected it, they labeled it. It's Indian motorcycles, and he had an Indian motorcycle in the trunk, in the back, in the bed. And I thought that was super cool. So I made this piece of art to commemorate it. And for all I know, the guy's listening to this show, but this is a way for people's hard work to be recognized and appreciated.
Yeah, so it's not just like posting it on Instagram and getting some likes, but you're posting it on chain for forever, basically. So it is persistent as historical, I guess. I can't even think of the word. You know what I'm trying to say.
It's an oral record. And that gets back to my background in college in oral history. But for example, that image there, the series of dashboards, if you click on them, it's sort of my story, the green one, the chartreuse one, and the purple one beside it.
Are you
Then we're
talking
at the
about here with
same,
the hood ornament? The hood ornament?
yes. Okay. I told you I had some experience metal welding. Well, this is beautiful. This guy took his metal grinder and made art on the hood of a rusted vehicle. I think that's just awesome. And I appreciate it. And that's sort of what I'm celebrating is he did something really cool there. It was in an event that I urge a lot of people to go to. If you haven't heard of it, it's called TROG, the gentleman of racers, I believe. And they do a lot of very interesting, authentic vehicles. A truck was at TROG, and these hood ornaments were from TROG. And things like people don't know a lot. There's a new resurgence coming up of people reinterpreting automobiles that has its own lore. Super cool.
What do you mean by reinterpreting the automobiles?
Well, for example, those hoods, the red, the green, the purple. That guy, maybe he didn't have the money, or maybe he recognized the art in the rusted out body that was original. So he just sort of brushed it off and embellished it. That's a new artistic aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really interesting. It's sort of like in the 20s and the 30s, people used rivets in a way to express artistic ideas. And this guy was doing it with a grinder. And I didn't meet the guy, but I saw a car and I was like, that is neat.
Nice. Yeah. I like kind of jumping off your idea of cars as art. Art is a form of self-expression, and that's been something that has been part of car culture forever, is people express themselves through how they customize, modify their cars. And we were looking at this truck earlier. It's got kind of this rat rod style to it, and I've seen a lot of rat rods, and it's kind of cool because from somebody who doesn't know what they're looking at, they think that that's like some old neglected hot rod. But what is really the case is that patina is done on purpose. They're like very meticulous about how they apply the patina to these cars, so they have this specific type of aesthetic. And
well, in some cases, but I noticed that starting in LA about 2010. And it was a group of studio art directors that started buying up these old vehicles and using their art skills to make something interesting that didn't exist or isn't easy to find. But Trog, a lot of those vehicles at that event are actually handed down generations, and they know exactly the story. And it is true, So there's two splits. There's the split where people now are making cars that look like works of art, but they have created them. And then there's some that are the genuine article that inspire the newer generation.
And when you say the genuine article, do you mean the all original, like time capsules?
Yeah.
I totally agree. I just have to say, this one really caught my eye. I love. Okay, come on, you can load.
I don't know. As
There
I
we
said,
go.
it's under development.
Yeah.
Oh, you like that one?
I love the color on it, and the composition is great. This is something
Yeah.
I would hang on my wall in my office.
Well, there's a funny story about that. I worked I had two production teams for most of my life, and we were shooting in downtown LA, and I left them to clean up because I was exhausted. They were wrapping up, and I was driving up Sunset Boulevard. I shot this, I think, in the 90s. The copyright is listed on the NFT if you click over to it. But at any rate, the point is, I was cruising up Sunset Boulevard, and that was like very much not a place to go in East LA as a woman alone at night. But I saw this car gleaming in the neon light, and I just had to pull over. And of course, I had cameras in the trunk. So this is my middle of the night. The air conditioner on that motel, I can still hear it humming. And it was kind of covering my sounds. But I set up and shot that and then hopped in my car and drove off.
Nice. Well, I mean, as an artist myself, there's something about, getting that moment of inspiration that you just need to capture something. And, particularly when you combine that with cars, there's a lot of opportunities just exploring the urban jungle, as it were, to find these things. So I think that one's beautiful.
There's art everywhere. You just have to open your eyes and be receptive to it.
Most definitely. So can you explain a little bit of your grand vision of where you see your project going in the future, and how you hope it's going to, let's say, echo through the generations?
Well, my ultimate goal is to allow people to write back their story connected to the canonical NFT, which I will hold. All right. And that will always be visible online. So I can record other people's stories about a particular car onto that canonical NFT, and it can become a living chain of history. But I'm not there yet. I'm still working on that. But that's my dream, is to let's do it. You know, you might have owned that car on Sunset Boulevard. Yeah, it was East LA. That's where it was shot. So you might have owned that car and you might have an amazing story to tell about it. So right on. That's the way I'm looking at it, is let's connect it.
So you're imagining people being able to share their own stories about the cars that are featured in the art. So, like, let's say somebody discovers that image I was just showing, and then be able to see a crowdsourced history of other people's stories related to that vehicle or something that it reminds them of. Let's say, is that what you're thinking?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. Is we have amazing community, but we're far flung and we're not connected. But maybe canonical artworks that are preserved on blockchains, and people that are producing them care about their lineage and their ability to persist over time. We can let other people write their stories. It's just an amazing world that we have seen develop around probably the most important invention that has affected mankind in the last 140 years. Think about it. The automobile spun out of the bicycle. I think Carl Benz made the first ride in 1886. His wife, Bertha, stole the car out of the garage and took her two teenage sons, and off they went in a vehicle. There were no roads, there were no maps, there was no gas station. It was just wild that she did that. She stopped at a chemist, and he had heard about her husband, but he mixed up some volatile oils, and she poured that in the car and kept going. She got to her mother's house that evening and telegrammed her husband that they had made it okay, and he was mortified that she would do that. But that was the beginning. And then entire families. I mean, the French in particular were extremely motivated by the dream of the automobile. They were very passionate believers, and they were the primary monetary source in the beginning to get the automobile going. Then the Germans developed a way to manufacture vehicles. And I said, what is that German town? It begins on the V, with a V. It's on the North Shore. That's where all the production was developed for a long time, early on in the automobile. And then the Italians got into it. And the British had these laws about carts that kind of hampered their entry into production of automobiles. But entire families, when Henry Ford came along, he inspired a lot of European families to move to America and to take their technological knowledge and build out amazing companies. For example, the Studebaker family. Studebaker family came from Germany, and they came to America, to Pennsylvania. They built wagons. They built the prairie schooners that the pioneers used to travel the great deserts of America, searching for California and the West Coast. And they built the highways in Pennsylvania that connected the East Coast, Pennsylvania and New York, to the development of the lock system that led into the Great Lakes. and led into other forms of transportation. And this unlocked tremendous value change opportunity for transportation. All of these stories are part of us. We just don't know about them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you were saying how it's really shaped the world that we live in today, and the way I've always looked at it is, cars are something that have allowed us to experience freedom in a way that nobody really ever has before. Just being able to get in and go where you want, to be able to, drive cross country in a few days, which is something that was, previous to the automobile, or particularly the airplane, was, multiple months and, extremely dangerous. And then everything else, like all aspects of our society, our cities and everything, has grown around this delivery mechanism for humans. So it's really integral to how we experience the world. And my hope is that, with us moving towards more of these electric and autonomous vehicles, that we don't go in the opposite direction, where it's like cars are just appliances, and we're kind of limiting ourselves in our movement again, because we're thinking small and not, thinking about the freedom. Heck, even the freedom for right to repair is something that's kind of under attack right now, where a lot of modern vehicles, you have to take it to a dealer or somebody who's, authorized to work on that vehicle. So, the there's this struggle between the historical car culture that we're talking about and this kind of drab future, unfortunately. And my hope is that we can keep the passion alive, because if there's passion there, then there's a reason and a desire to keep these cars on the road and to not go, fully autonomous, if that makes sense.
Of course, it makes sense. And it teaches you so much as an individual to dive into how does this thing work and how can I keep it rolling and how can I use this as a literally the word vehicle is a conveyance, right? And for a lot of people, it's a conveyance of their life, not just their physical being, but their persona, their history, their abilities. It's a time capsule.
Definitely. And that said, I'm curious, what do you drive?
Well, right now I have kids that are learning to drive. So I'm driving what I think is one of the great cars. It's a 2017 Toyota. And that was one of the last great Toyotas that you could work on. It was my mother's car, and I bought it from her to teach my kids to drive because it's very safe and it's affordable to repair and it's utterly dependable.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I'm driving right now. I drive in my mind like I'm working on a Voisin right now, which is a very unusual 30s car from France.
How do you
It's a
spell
piece
that?
of
I'm going to
art
pull that up.
Yeah, it's Voisin, Voisin. They were involved in airplanes. So when the world wars came up, a lot of the people, the young men that were interested in engineering and technology were drawn to aviation as well as cars. And so there was this crossover effect between streamlining and rivets and how to keep the weight down in a vehicle versus the original cars, which of course were wooden bodied and very heavy. And,
Say Boison?
V is in victory,
V. That explains why it was not.
Voisin, yeah, Voisin.
Got it.
Anyway,
There we are.
yeah, Voisins are really interesting. There aren't very many of them, but one of my special interests because of my history is the crossover between aviation and airplanes. And aerodynamics is that story, which we're still pursuing in racing today. I mean, aerodynamics are everything in Formula One. The unseen barriers in the air, the vortices, the vacuums that are created as you move through time and space are what's being tested. I look at racing as test beds, you know,
Yeah.
and they're very important for moving society forward.
Definitely. So many of the innovations that have made their way into everyday commuter cars have come out of racing. So it's
Yeah.
like, a lot of people might look at racing as just, it's a fun sport, it's something rich people do, but it actually has moved the automotive technology forward so much. So yeah, you're totally right about that. So
It's sort of like NASA. You know,
Mhm.
NASA was very similar. There's an Art Deco delight, right?
Yeah,
I
this thing's
mean, that's
beautiful.
just the lines. You can see aerodynamics there, can't you?
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
they were exploring in their mind. I think that's why I'm so fond of the 30s Bugattis designed by
Oh, yeah.
Jean Bugatti, because he was very influenced by the teardrop or the raindrop falling through the air. You know, why does nature form water that's articulating itself through the air as drop? And they thought and thought about that. And I respect it because I didn't think about it. But then when I read back on history and I realized that was their primary motivation, that's why a lot of these cars were designed the way they are, was because they were looking at nature for examples of how they could move through space more efficiently.
Mhm. Yeah,
Isn't
that's
that
that's
cool?
really
That's so
fascinating.
cool.
That's awesome. And so let's see. What was the I had a follow-up question on the car thing. What was your favorite car that you've ever owned?
I had a 6.9 Mercedes, a 6.9 Mercedes. Thing was a hot rod. And it was totally a sleeper. And it had pneumatic hydraulic transmission, you know? It was a 6.9 Mercedes is the bee's knees, as my dad used to say. It would scream. And it was no one really knew what it was, or, you know, it was in an era of
Let's see if we
diesel
can pull it up.
powered.
Is
Yeah.
this like
Yep.
the
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
four-door?
Yeah. 76 was the year I had. It was
Nice.
really super cool.
Yeah, and these things
That
were
was my
bulletproof.
favorite. And I had a Z car I loved, I absolutely adored. And I had two of them. I wrecked one.
Oh, you and Gary have something in common. He had a 300ZX that
Oh,
unfortunately got totaled.
It did. And I
Gary,
actually wanted to
Gary.
ask a question in regards to the car. How were you able to get your hands on this 1930s, I believe, right? Car. Like, I know that's rare. B, how will you be able to like get it, especially given, that those cars are either A, rare to find, and B, usually they're already been restaurants and they pretty difficult to find something like that.
Right. Well, I've been doing it a long time. And I started on 4x5 cameras, right? You know what they are like. They have to have a big tripod. You've got box. When I went to Germany in the 80s and I took 9 cases of equipment. Oh my God. I got to Germany and the taxi driver was beside himself. So I had to get 2 cabs and I stayed there like 8 or 9 months. I had a crew there and we were pulling cars out of, you know, bunker busters. They were hidden underground that hadn't seen the light of day for many years with good reason. During
Mhm.
the war, they were protected. And I loved the community. I met so many amazing families throughout my lifetime that had coddled these cars and restored them, and the kids grew up in them. And I followed the car, and they would bring them out for me to shoot them, or they would want them recorded in a way they knew that they would be appreciated. And that was part of the avenue. But I go to car shows, just like you go, you know. Car shows are really important because they
Right.
let you have a firsthand contact with the people that are caring for these vehicles and get to know them and talk to them. And they need you too, you know, if you're a creative, they need you too. And it's something that we're all involved in. And that's the way I look at it. We're all part of this lore, just like Gary knows exactly what it's like to sit in the seat of a Z car and lose it. I've
It
been
did hurt.
there. You go around once, you go around twice. It's the American yoga when time slows down. You're just thinking, oh my God, am I gonna get control?
Yep. Yeah. Now there's a whole type of racing that's all about living on the edge of that control, which is something
Yeah.
that I've done and will be getting back into, which is
Oh,
drifting.
of course. And that's what drifting came out of, double clutching. Where I grew up in Appalachia, you know, they all knew how to double clutch because they were running whiskey. They were
Mhm.
running moonshine during Prohibition out of the mountains and beat to hell cars, trying to get them to rivers or the Great Lakes or wherever to make a buck.
Yeah, that's where NASCAR came from, was modifying
Yes,
these cars so they could run their moonshine.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
White lightning.
Exactly. Yeah, and drifting came out of Japan, in of a bunch of rebel kids working on their cars and sliding them around the mountain roads, and then it
Yeah.
became a sport of its own.
And what I'm saying is, it's real, it's visceral. The connection with vehicles and physics and the invisible air of aerodynamics and the craftsmanship, it's tangible and it gets in your head. You just can't let go.
Yeah, that's what I tell people: is once you get bit by the bug, they're good luck. You're not getting away anytime soon. And
Yeah.
it's like my daughter; she's almost 19 years old, and she, of course, being around me and my family, all, car fanatics, she got bit early. She ended up actually investing a little bit of money in crypto, and she turned that into some profits that got her her first project car. So
Wow.
now she's looking at getting into drifting herself. So yeah,
There you go.
it's one of those things that
That's,
goes through generations.
yeah, it's, no, it's real and it's something that carries knowledge. And that's very important for humans, is to be able to pass this firsthand knowledge down. So many things people at car shows have told me about a car. You know, if you're curious and you ask questions, they're eager to share with you.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's that's where it really is.
Yeah, I mean, people put, countless hours, thousands of dollars into this vehicle, this inanimate object that is means so much to them. Yeah, they want to tell you their story. They want to tell you why they decided to do this little thing over here, or, the struggle of, swapping in a different transmission, whatever it happens to be. They love their stories, and
And
community
those
really
stories
comes
should
out
be
of that.
preserved. That's
Mhm.
my goal, is that in each NFT is a story. It tells you about my story about the car, you know, and I publish a newsletter on
Mhm.
paragraph.xyz that talks about some of the cars that I've encountered in my life. That top one of the Greyhound bus station in Hollywood, California, is the most recent newsletter post, and it's about Tom Matano, the chief designer at Mazda Automotive, and his story of coming from Japan to America and how he had the bug, you know. And when I think back, I wrote this, he passed away last year. What a loss. But he taught me so much and he shared so much knowledge, and he gave us the Mazda Miata, which is an awesome car. And it was totally driven, it was inspired for Tom by a Lotus. He wanted people to be able to work on a car in their backyard and have it to drive around. And that's what got the Miata launched.
Yeah, and one
And
of the
what a
reasons why it was
car.
so popular, yeah, that when that car came out, it was really affordable and probably the most fun vehicle you could buy for under $100,000. I actually the first car that I started drifting in was an NA Miata that was turbocharged. So NA means it was the first generation of the Miata. It was a 1990, and
Uh-huh.
man, that thing was so much fun. And I remember my friends making fun of me when they saw me pull up in a Miata. They're like, you're driving a chick car. And I was like, why don't you hop in the passenger seat and I'll show you what this thing is all about. And by the time we were done going sideways at 60 miles an hour, they're like, okay, I take it back, that thing is incredible. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's Tom. And Tom, when he came to America, he landed in Chicago and he took a Greyhound bus to California. He had no other way to travel and he knew about buses from Japan. So he took the Greyhound and he arrived in Hollywood at this amazing modernist Greyhound station in Hollywood. And that's another thing that's part of car culture is cars have influenced so much of our architecture and the
mhm.
world around us. There's still artifacts living among us of deco gas stations or drive-ins or hot dog stands that were built because of the fun of the automobile and having a place to go and get out. But Tom, speaking very little English, took this 4-day bus trip from Chicago to Los Angeles. And on that trip, looking out the window, he got a real feel for the soul of America and how people lived as he looked out the window of the bus driving across the country. Got to Hollywood at night. It was late, it was dark. He didn't know where he was. He went out to the curb. And that's where I come into the story. He was in town for a car event that we were both in, and he asked me to drive him over to the bus station if I knew where it was. So I took him over there and we went in and walked around. It was still there. And I had shot this bus station in the 90s in Hollywood. And that's how I happened to have the picture. But he had many years later, and he asked me to drive him on his first trip through Los Angeles, retracing his memory, driving down Vine Street to Wilshire Boulevard. And then the taxi driver, who was an African American, turned on Western because he assumed that Tom, a Japanese man, belonged in Koreatown, right? That's what he knew. All Asians were alike in his mind.
Mhm.
So he was to go into the heart of Koreatown. So he let Tom out with his suitcase and told him to walk up.
Wow.
So Tom, he was young. He had a permanent. His grandmother had made him get a perm in his Japanese hair because she thought that he would fit in better in America if he looked more like the people that she believed lived there. And he was walking through Koreatown late at night and he realized he was in Koreatown and that people didn't want him there.
Mhm.
And he was freaked out, but he didn't know what to do. And after walking with his suitcase for all those blocks, no wheels, right? He was carrying the thing or whatever. He went into a Korean grocery store and mimed to the man that he wanted to go to sleep and he didn't know what to do. And the guy took him in and let him sleep upstairs over the garage. And Tom found that garage, that that grocery in Koreatown and went in and thanked the man. The man was still there. So
Wow.
what a story, man. And
Yeah.
that kind of like if you've ever broken down in a strange place and had to get help, it's kind of like that Tennessee Williams play where you rely upon the kindness of strangers. And that's what happens. And that's what makes the world go round. It's like you understand the person's situation, and if you have a good soul, you're going to help them.
Yep, definitely. That's a great story. I feel
It
like
was a
you
good
are
story.
just chock full of those. We could probably sit here for hours just coming up with
Tom was
stories.
amazing. So many times I would in some part of the world in some museum, and I would see an oil filter that blew my mind. And I would get a hold of Tom, like an early email, and say, have you ever seen that fuel filter? And he would know about it. He would
Mhm.
know about it. You know, it was just, I was so lucky. There's so many people that are in car culture that have been so generous. And that's what we have to do. We have to pay it forward. We have to
Well
persist the
said.
knowledge.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think hopefully with what you're building and with what we're building here on our
Yes.
end, that's something that we can well into the future. And sorry if you're hearing my dogs going bonkers in the background.
It's
Um,
okay.
but
Life.
and I think, now's the time to do it, because I think one of the biggest detriments to car culture in the last 10 years has been social media. It's like we've never been more connected, but at the same time kind of alone.
Right.
And people, they look for validation through likes on Instagram, TikTok, not necessarily through going out and connecting with the people in the real world as much. And when they do, it's more like, how can we together do something that's going to get us more likes on Instagram or TikTok, right? And that's where that
Yeah.
whole idea of like the street takeovers and sideshows came from, which has been massively detrimental to car culture, which I'm sure you've heard about those
Yeah.
before, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So now I think is a really good time, because I feel like there's a little bit of social media fatigue, and people
Mhm.
don't get the same level of dopamine from the engagement they did a few years ago. And we have things like blockchain, where we can now start to um, encode the history of these cars on chain. We can use the community building nature of Web3 to build real life communities and bring people back together in their local area to create car clubs. This is like a really big trend. Like there's so many people creating car clubs now,
Good.
and this isn't something I've seen as prevalent in the last 10-20 years. This is a relatively new thing. So to me, this is a sign. It's kind of like a tree that's growing out of the ground, where we can see a new form of car culture, where these young kids are resurrecting what you and I had experienced, 20 years ago, um, and maintain it for another generation. So, yeah, that's what I really hope that we can manage to foster,
You're
build.
doing it. I mean, you've got this podcast and you're doing it. That's why I applaud you, is because there has to be people like you that step forward to bring the community in. And it's so important. And I'm
Mhm.
glad you're doing it. And for everyone on here, thank you, because it persists knowledge. He's sharing things with you that you need to know. Just like I'm kind of just rattling off stories, but they're things that you probably, some of them you will remember. And that's good because you can hand it off.
Mhm.
It's
Yep.
oral history.
Yeah. Yep. And I guess speaking of sharing, the history that we come across, I definitely want to direct all of our viewers to go to paragraph.com/@carculture. You can also find links to this in your, let's see, it's in your
On the
Farcaster.
website under
Mhm.
stories. But as I said, the CarCulture.com is under development, but I'm
Yep.
moving it there. And Paragraph runs on blockchain. So what
Mhm.
I publish is indelible and it's shared. You can join the mailing list and it's free for now. But it's a way to I'm trying to record some of these stories as I go,
Mhm.
so that people like that truck, that was shot in South Carolina at a tourist attraction. And there was a young couple there that had just gotten married. She was in her wedding dress and they were driving this truck. It was just a really cool story, you know. I mean, they ran away us to a JP. It wasn't a big wedding. It was a very simple personal thing, and they were in this truck. It was a beautiful thing.
Nice. Well, if you're watching this and you want to hear more of these great stories from her time exploring car culture, definitely go and subscribe to the newsletter.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
as many may well know, we have got a newsletter of our own. It is called Driven Culture. So similar to Car Culture,
Yeah.
we've got Driven Culture, and we release our new every week. This week, I think we're going to be trying something new where we're going to be publishing it on Saturday mornings and see how that does for a little while moving forward. But we like to cover some really interesting cars that we come across that are available on the market. Oftentimes it is a car that our dealership partner, Rev Hard Motors, has available in his inventory because he specializes in particularly Japanese sports cars of the 90s. In this case, I found this car on his import page. You can view cars that are available to import from Japan. And for those who know about Liberty Walk, they are the most extreme cars you can find out of Japan. And this is one of my all-time favorite vehicles, an S15 Sylvia. I drive an S14. That's my daily driver. But this S14 or S15 is got the full Liberty Walk like body kit, wide body kit that's inspired by Time Attack race cars. And so I had to, once I saw this, I was like, oh, I've got to share this car because this right here is a piece of history from the late 90s. And you can really see that wild Japanese in this vehicle.
Yeah,
So
I definitely get it. That I look forward to reading that because if you go back to that, I mean, look at the front end. Talk about aerodynamics. There's a lot going on there, and I'm sure you could speak to that. And then the wing on the back. I mean, that was wow. That was
Yeah.
Can-Am. Think about Can-Am cars.
Very
in that
much like a
period.
Can-Am
Oh my
car.
God. Yeah.
Yeah, this
They
has
were incredible.
and unfortunately, this link is going to take me. There's an issue with links to his website, so it'll just take me to the overall listings page. But I know it's relatively small, but it has a massive chin spoiler on it. It has NASCAR style channels along the hood, wide body with ducts in front of the rear tires for cooling the brakes, and the entire back edge of the car is one giant spoiler with the raised spoiler on top of it. So yeah, these are really wild but very functional aerodynamic cars.
Absolutely. They're creating negative vacuums back there with that spoiler. And they're having to channel the air into the tires because they don't really understand how much heat is going to build up in that vacuum. So they were thinking forward there. It's really fascinating, guys. Definitely. I think talking about those kind of cars makes it real because you're more likely to encounter those on the road than a Voisin. But they still have their own story to tell.
Definitely. In fact, let me show you something real quick.
And Rex, while you're showing us, just real quick, I just want to mention that thanks to everyone who's here. There's a lot of engagement. There's some questions as well. So if we do have time, we'll bring the questions. And if not, perhaps on another episode where we can bring, Cindy for another episode.
Absolutely.
Because everyone is so engaged and captivated by your storytelling, and also all links have been shared. So make sure if you guys want to hear more about stories that she has, make sure you subscribe to her newsletter. I dropped the link on the chat. Also check our newsletter out as well. So all links are in the chat. So Yeah, I'm taking notes right now on some of the questions, but if we do have time, Rex, we can probably have them at the end. In the meantime,
Okay.
I could, yeah, I guess
All
go
right.
forth with what you were going to show us at the moment.
Sure. Yeah. We can get to some questions here in just a little bit, but I just had to
Okay.
show because I'm such a fan of this era of Nissan. So this is an S15. Well, there we are. An S15 Sylvia drift car, and you can tell even this looks a little wild. And then you see the one that I have on screen here, and this is just like you honestly will never see a Liberty Walk S15 or really any Liberty Walk in the wild unless you're at like SEMA or one of the rare shows that they come out to. So
What about that show in Long Beach, the Japanese show they have yearly?
yeah, Japanese classic car show.
Yeah, that's probably, you might be able to see some of these
Yep.
things there.
Get
That's
some
a great
really great
show.
cars out there.
Yeah.
So I just had to share because I'm such a Nissan fan. That's my thing.
Well, I think you
particularly
should do a show on that car and get some people to talk to you about what they were solving, what they were thinking about.
Mhm.
Maybe some of the people listening have some experience like that and want to jump on with you.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I need to have a Japanese translator on the show with me
Yeah.
to accomplish that, but
I bet you
Yeah.
can find one.
Definitely. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of do a quick jaunt through our newsletter, and if this is interesting to any of our viewers, definitely please do go to the to drivenculture.xyz. That's drvnculture.xyz. We also share headlines from motorsports. We've got gaming, so automotive and sim racing games, automotive Web3 headlines, and car culture. One of the big ones I'm excited for, and I'll leave it on this and then we can get to some questions, is one of the most underrated movies of all time was Speed Racer movie from 2008. I grew up watching the Speed Racer cartoon from the 1960s, and I loved it. And I even went back and watched the entire series in my adulthood, and it totally holds up. So this movie was written and directed by the same guys that did The Matrix. And
Wow.
this movie never really like got the attention it deserved. And the reason I bring it up is because they are remastering it in 4K and bringing it back to the theaters this year. So very excited about that. If you have not seen this movie, definitely get a ticket and go see it in the theaters. It's probably one of the most like visually stunning movies you'll ever see in your life. So I'll leave it on that, but let's go ahead and get some questions. And we are over the hour mark, but I think we've got enough time there where we can just, see what questions we've got, and we'll start to wrap it on up.
Okay. So one of the questions that we have here, and this for Cindy, is how are you so in tune with the Cali culture, given that, you're not in Cali? Well, we're not going to say where you're at, but, you're in tune with so much of the Cali culture in regards to events, the storytelling, and also your artwork is it just clicks with the
I lived
California
in
culture.
California for many years, and there's a lot of cars out there, or there were. Did you ever hear this famous quote that they used to use on radio shows to get people Sundays,
Oh, yeah.
where you would get people to come to the racetrack on Sundays? So that was an entire marketing aesthetic, was race on Sunday, sell on Monday. So that started in California. It was really big in California.
It's funny.
It started in Britain.
I think that line, race on Sunday, sell on Monday, is actually a line in the Speed Racer movie too, because it has a little bit of a theme
The
like
Bentley brothers
that.
used that line in the 20s in Britain. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What else we got, Gary?
Yeah, let me rolling back because I had them here. Actually, one of them was from one of our community members. They were asking in regards to some of the car culture. What's the difference? What improvements do you see that it's reclined occurred, I guess, from the car culture of the 90s, early 2000s to now?
What improvement?
Or improvements or differences are you seeing from the car culture?
Yeah, let's go with differences.
Yeah, let's go with differences, I guess.
From the 90s to today. Is that the
Yeah.
question?
Mhm.
Wow, there's so many. I mean, think of the racing history and the street race.
Oh,
Oh,
did we lose her? We'll hang out for just a minute to see if we're able to get her back.
but in the meantime, yeah, I mean, I'm seeing that a lot of people actually are really enjoying the content. I am going to share the link to the stories and to her photography she has made, and also I believe, are some of the gallery in regards to her NFT, I think, photography NFT collection. I'm dropping it
Mhm.
here, so make sure you subscribe to her newsletter, guys, to hear more stories like the one she was just sharing earlier in the episode. But man,
Yep.
what a great episode! Shout out to everybody who's here. Everybody's enjoying it. We have
Mhm.
over 250 viewers at the moment,
Yeah.
253 to be exact. And just shout out to the community who's here. Thanks for engaging with the content. Thanks for asking questions. Thanks for engaging also with one another. We appreciate you. Shout out to Rachel as well, who's here. I want to give a shout out to Anjay Media as always, and to everyone who's here from to the community members. And with that, Rex, not sure if you want to give it another 2 more minutes before let's see if she will be able to join us back in, or
Mhm.
we start wrapping things.
Yeah. Let's give it a few minutes to see if she joins in, so that way we can get some final words from Cindy. But while
Okay.
we're waiting, definitely go and follow CarCulture.eth on X. You can also find it on Farcaster as well. As you can tell, she has so much passion for the automotive world, and has just endless stories about car culture. So make sure that you go follow her. And it looks like we've got her back. Awesome. We were just
Sorry
giving
about
you
that,
a
guys.
shout out to have people
Oh,
go and follow you.
yeah,
So
well, thanks. Any other questions?
yeah, actually, we didn't catch your answer to the what's changed since the 90s. So why don't we, if you don't mind, reiterating what you said before you dropped, and then I think we'll go ahead and close up the show.
Oh, I'm very excited about the future because the automobile and the aviation is merging, and the e-votals I'm crazy about them. A few years ago, I was driving down Pacific Coast Highway on a very remote stretch, and this damn black and white, I thought it was a helicopter, came off the cliff straight at me and launched over the Pacific Ocean. I almost ran over the mountain. And it was one of the Joby. They were testing the Joby, which Toyota invested in them. It's a combination helicopter air taxi, and they've been licensed now in the Bay Area. I'm super excited about that because think what's coming.
Yeah.
It's really it's a car that can drive on the road, but it can also fly.
Yeah, they've been saying we should be seeing flying cars for a long time, and now we're finally about to get them.
Yeah, it's thrilling.
Awesome. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for
Thanks,
being on the
guys.
podcast with us. And you've had some amazing stories, and I love what you're doing. So I hope that we
Everyone
can
has
find.
amazing stories. You have amazing stories. It's just we have to find a center so that we can compound our collective knowledge. That's
I
what's
love it.
so cool about it.
Absolutely. Well, I hope that we can find some ways to work together in the future. I know we'll definitely be in touch. So, yeah, thank you again for joining us. And thanks to all the 254 people that are currently watching live. That'll do it for today. We'll be back next Wednesday for episode 35. We've got our daily driven newsletter coming out on Saturday, which is going to be issue number 117. If I remember correctly. Yeah, 117. And don't forget to go and subscribe to the Car Culture newsletter as well from Cindy here. So I guess until next week, we'll say goodbye.
Drive on.
And yeah.
Okay.
All right,
Peace.
great. Okay,
Bye.
cheers.